Hi, thanks for joining us. You're listening to the Health Essentials podcast brought to you by Cleveland Clinic. I'm your host, Cassandra Holloway. Today, we're broadcasting virtually as we are practicing social distancing. We're joined virtually by chiropractor Dr. Andrew Bang. Dr. Bang, thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak with us.
Oh, you guys are so welcome. I'm happy to do it. Glad to be here.
Today, we're going to be talking about managing the aches and pains of working from home and how to find relief, since many people have found themselves working in these makeshift offices due to COVID-19. But before we begin, we want to remind listeners that this is for informational purposes only and should not replace your own doctor's advice. So for the past several months, many companies have shifted to remote work to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. And while that's great, many people have never found themselves working from home before, especially full time. And it can be a bit of an adjustment, not just from a schedule standpoint, but also from how you work and where you work in terms of your setup. Maybe you have a desk, maybe you don't, maybe you're working on the couch right now. So today we're going to be working through some tips and advice for our listeners when it comes to working from home and good positions for our bodies. So Dr. Bang, before we dive into the specifics of managing these aches and pains, I first want to start off by asking you how you're doing during the pandemic, and if you'll tell us a little bit about your practice at Cleveland Clinic, especially during these times.
Yeah, well, we're surviving like everyone else. It's a crazy time, I got to tell you. We stopped working when the pandemic first broke out in order to conserve PPE for those frontline providers who really needed it, as well as to protect our patients. Once we got a little bit more understanding about the virus, as of last week, we are back into practice, taking all of the best practices and recommendations by the governor, as well as our own Cleveland Clinic, on how to see patients. So we are seeing patients again safely to help them with those aches and pains that they have from not only working at home, but everything else that life throws at them. So we're doing good. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. So let's start off by talking about the basics of good ergonomics. What does this term mean in the workspace, and why is it important to us?
So whenever you're talking about ergonomics, Cassandra, it's really about your positioning of your body to avoid injury, avoid pain, avoid fatigue, and just improve your overall work performance. I kind of like to say this mantra in my head, and I tell all my patients this when they're setting up their workstation, whether it be at home or whatever they do for a living. But it's head right, it's arms right, it's back right, and it's move right. So if you get those kind of four things set up, head right, arms right, back right, move right, it allows you to really get in the position that best suits you and avoid those kind of aches and pains that we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. And everyone wants to avoid these aches and pains. So what are some of these conditions that are typically associated with bad ergonomics? What are we trying to prevent?
I mean, everyone knows the classic things like carpal tunnel, but it also leads to a lot of neck pain, headaches, low back. I mean, you can even get headaches and migraines from this. It's kind of crazy. I mean, any kind of muscular strain put on a body part for a long extended period of time is going to lead to some kind of daily damage that will lead to pain eventually. And there's a bunch of different easy things that you can do to avoid that and to feel better.
That's really interesting, the point that you brought up about how a bad posture or a bad setup kind of can affect migraines and headaches. So maybe, if a listener is listening to this podcast and they've been working from home for a couple of weeks and maybe they've noticed an increase in headaches, it could be, something right off the bat that they could say, maybe it's because of my setup, my workplace setup.
Oh, totally. I mean, there's so many factors that cause headaches and migraines, but muscular tension and that repetitive stress on our shoulders and neck from poor positioning is a huge cause of headaches and migraines. And like you said, if you've never had them before or they're less and now they're more frequent, definitely you should be listening to this. Definitely should be introducing some of these advice and tips that I'm giving you into your workplace. If it doesn't help, go to the next step. A virtual visit with your PCP, ask for a PT referral, get a chiropractic referral, get some other professionals looking in on your case specifically. But yeah, today we're going to talk all about how to avoid those kind of things.
So let's talk about best case scenario of an office setup. You mentioned those four components of things to keep in mind. What would that look like? What would the ideal workplace setup look like?
Okay, cool. So, all right, so we have laptops and we have desktops, and even though they're totally different computers, the principles we're going to be talking about are very similar. You just have to apply them to your specific area. And I always tell all my patients, work the problem, figure out the solution that works best for you, follow these as guidelines. So let's go through each one of them. Remember, we got head right, arms right, back right, move right. So first of all, let me remind most of you, I got some cool props today. Your head is like a bowling ball. Yes, it's about 10 pounds. That's a lot of pressure on your head and shoulders. And we've learned from some really great research that, let me turn to the side just so you can see this viewpoint. If my head is straight over my shoulders, I got that 10 pounds of pressure, but the further it moves away from my neutral position, the weight goes up exponentially. So if I move my head even 15 degrees forward, which is just slightly looking down, right? My head weighs from 10 pounds to about 24 pounds. That's a lot. That's a big increase. And if let's say I'm looking at the desk, like, do you ever look at paperwork, Cassandra, or you're looking over spreadsheets on your desk?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like 30 degrees of flexion. And now the neck pressure jumps to almost 40 pounds. Can you believe that? 40 pounds on your neck and shoulders. And if you do that for a long period of time, that's how we get this kind of damage that we're talking about in pain. So get your computer screens straight in front of you at where your eyes are looking primarily at the area of the screen that you use the most. You can use books or a box or other things you can purchase to get the screen up to the appropriate level. And if you have two screens, what I recommend is putting the primary screen right in the center. Secondary screen off to your left or to your right. And I tell people often move your primary screen, move your secondary screen. So you're not always just looking to the right to your secondary screen. In a couple of weeks, change it to the left side so you're looking also left. And it's always about keeping your neck movable, whether your station is two screens or one screen. So that moves us right into like the arm right position. Because if I'm using a laptop, which I do, whenever my screen is up really high, now I can't kind of reach up to my keyboard. I'm going to have a lot of neck and shoulder trap and wrist problems, right? So I got to get my arms into their preferred position, which is like at a 90 position. My shoulders need to be down at a resting position, elbows at a 90, and my wrists staying, or they're neutral, not too much flexion or extension because of my keyboard is in the wrong position. So with a laptop, I got to use a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse. Cassandra, what are you using at home?
So I have the two screens that you had mentioned. And then I have a keyboard that kind of pulls away wireless, and then a wireless mouse as well.
Excellent. So a mouse is huge. Do you have like a normal mouse or an ergonomic mouse?
I do, and I wanted to ask what the difference was.
Oh, perfect. So that was kind of what my next thing is. So I'm a chiropractor, you all know that. I use my wrist and hand a lot. So I try to avoid using a normal mouse because it makes my wrist stay in what we call pronation. That's like where we twist it. And that over a period of time can exacerbate carpal tunnel syndromes or give you a wrist pain in general. I use an ergonomic mouse. So if you're watching the screen, this is what an ergonomic mouse looks like. It makes my hand twist into its more neutral position, where almost like it's like I'm shaking someone else's hand. That's your wrist neutral position. So you want to find a mouse, especially if you're having wrist problems or you're trying to avoid wrist problems. That's like that kind of setup. Sometimes they're called tower mouse or ergonomic mouse. And I just prefer those because it's all about the little things that you do to avoid an injury long term. And using an ergonomic mouse is so easy. It's no different than a normal mouse, except for the positioning of your wrist. So if you don't have one, Cassandra, it's time to get one. Okay. So,
Absolutely.
all right. So I would say the other thing with mouse is changing the position of where your arm is. Okay. Instead of just always keeping it on that little mouse pad, move that mouse pad around. So sometimes I'm going to be extending my arm. Sometimes it will be bent a little bit. It'll be away from me or towards me. And all we're trying to do is create variety. Create a non-injury by repetitive stress. I mean, we all kind of know what that means. That just means doing something repeated that's going to cause an injury. And a mouse is definitely one of those. I can't even tell you the number of people who come in complaining of right-sided pain, and we identify it's because they're repetitive use of the mouse. So,
Sure.
got our keyboard, in front of us, where our wrists are neutral as possible, our shoulders down, our elbows bent at that 90 position. That leads us to the back right. How is your back right? So what kind of chair are you using at home?
It's just a standard like swivel computer chair.
Okay, you were able to pick one up. That's good. I know they got sold out at a lot of a lot of stores. So let's say that you aren't fortunate enough to have some of those built-in features of a normal computer chair, which includes like lumbar support, the ability to change your height, and things like that. You want to first get your legs, your thighs parallel with the cushion of your seat. Okay, this will allow the pressure to be evenly distributed, and you won't have like thigh pain or leg pain. So if you are vertically challenged, your legs might be kind of dangling now. You don't want to use the rungs of the chair. You want to get a box or a stool, right? And then your back needs to kind of be placed up against the back of the chair. And this is to help remind you what normal posture is for your low back. Do you ever sit towards the edge of the chair, Cassandra?
Sure, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So anyone who does that means you're super assertive, which I love, but you're going to get tired and fatigued in your back, and that's going to lead to like tightness and then eventually pain and et cetera, et cetera. So using a lumbar pillow, a lot of people ask me, should I use a lumbar pillow? And it's good because, and I've got one right here to show you, it reminds you to sit with a natural curve of your back. You want to place this in your small of your back. You want to adjust it to you. So that will put your head over your neck and shoulders over your low back. So you get that perfect kind of straight column. And your back, your spine is a curve on purpose. Think of it like a spring. So as gravity bears down on it, the spring can kind of change the pressure and distribute it evenly throughout the spine. That's why it's curved. If you straighten it out or overly curve it because you've gotten tired from sitting at the edge of your chair, now you're slouching forward or backward, you're going to start to have that discomfort we talked about. Another thing that I really like to recommend for your home office or even work office is like a cushion to sit on. I love this one because it has like a cutout for your tailbone. A lot of people have tailbone pain just from sitting too long and or a previous injury. Childbirth's a huge one. Wouldn't believe it. A lot of babies hit the tailbone as they come out, and it could be years later, and the mother is still complaining of sensitivity of the tailbone. A cushion that allows no pressure on the coccyx or tailbone is fantastic for those who have to get stuck sitting for a long period of time. So take home is back up against the chair and creating a natural posture by using a lumbar pillow or even a small pillow at home. It doesn't have to be purchased. And then something for your buttocks if necessary. And then last of all, it's all about moving right. Even if I sit in the best possible posture, if I stay there for too long, it's going to cause pain and discomfort. We just get fatigued. I mean, that's why, do you ever go to the gym and do the same exercise the whole time you're there? Not that you're going
Try not to.
Right. You can't go to gyms right now anyways, but
right.
The point is, if you did, you'd have an injury, and everyone knows that. And so it's no different with our office setup. Whenever you get stuck doing the same thing, you're going to get injured. So let's take a quick break and let's talk about a trap stretch. I love this one. I use it all the time for myself as well as I teach my patients. So the best thing to do is to reach down. Do this with me, okay? Reach down and grab the side of your chair, okay? So your arm is on the inside of the armrest. So it doesn't hurt. And then you're going to lean. Let's say you're grabbing with your left arm. Lean to the right and allow your trap to stretch. One thing you can do to make this even better is now try to shrug your shoulder to the ceiling. As you lift up, you'll feel even a deeper stretch in that trap muscle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it feels good, doesn't it? Yeah, and I like to hold these for, 20, 30 seconds. You can go as long as 2 minutes when you're doing a stretch safely and actually very effectively. And you just do them both sides. Good. Look at you doing both sides. Good patient.
How often should we be thinking about this type of stretch?
So when it comes to any movement, I always try to get in my mind that 45 to 60-minute time frame. If I'm stuck doing one thing for that long, it's going to be a problem. So I'd sneak this in if I'm on a conference call. If I'm reading a long email, which we get tons of those now, right? I can easily do this stretch and continue to be productive. You sneak it in there, okay? So I will often do that stretch 5-6 times a day. And then I will often tell people in order to move right, you got to transition between sitting and standing. So that brings up the standing desk, right? You said you kind of have one, don't you?
I have one at work, which I'm really missing because
Yeah,
oftentimes if I feel my shoulders or neck getting tight, I'll go to stand or I'll sit down, and I alternate between it.
I love it. So that's exactly what they're intended to be used for, is moving up and down. In fact, I had a patient come in last week, and she told me she went into her office with mask like she was required to, but she's still working from home. She borrowed her standing desk to use at home until she can get back into the office, which I think is a great idea. Now, the idea between the positioning of your keyboard, mouse, monitor with the standing desk is no different from what we already talked about. It's getting at eye level. It's making sure your elbows are by your sides and at that 90-degree angle, as well as your wrists aren't being flexed or extended too much. Okay. But yeah, so how often are you transitioning between sitting and standing?
I usually try to do either the morning that I'm sitting or the afternoon that I'm sitting. So like vice versa. I'm standing and then sitting, kind of half and half.
Okay, so that's better than nothing. But when we read the research, the best practices for using a standing desk is to, yes, do 50% of the time sitting, 50% standing, but it's to alternate. It's unclear the exact best time to alternate. Like we could say every 45, 60, 90 minutes. That's unclear. That research has yet to be done. But they do say that people who alternate throughout the day back and forth do better than those who just either sit for 4 hours at a time and stand for 4 hours at a time. So I would just incorporate. It's not that hard. Again, like you could set a timer and say, oh, every 60 minutes, like I'm going to switch to my standing position. I'm then back down, or every 45 or whatever. Just find that motion. I had a patient teach me this really cool phrase. I use it all the time. Motion is lotion. I mean, it's kind of dumb, but it's cute, but it makes total sense, right? The
Right.
more you move your joints, they actually self-lubricate. It's a physiological effect, which is fantastic. And then your muscles also will stretch from being too tense, and or sometimes when we're overstretching things, that standing, you engage muscles that have been overstretched for too long from sitting and or standing, and they kind of feel better. So I'll incorporate that into your life. Motion is lotion.
Love it.
Yeah.
So for people
Oh,
who are working from home, and I guess, do you have any advice for making that makeshift standing desk? You said still focus on, the four components and your head, eye level to your screen. Any other
right.
advice for if people are finding boxes and kind of stacking them
Yeah.
up to the
I
standing
mean,
desk?
that's great. I love creativity. A high countertop. You could use, like, just even utilizing the kitchen table instead of picking the couch. But if you have to use the couch, then just maintaining the things we talked about and moving a ton. If you're on the couch or you don't have a designated workspace at home because of space, moving from one to another, standing to do every conference call, standing to do other things that you otherwise would do seated, to keep that movement going. Using a a TV tray to get your computer up on. I mean, there's you can be creative, but the principles are still the same. But if you get stuck in bad posture, it's just you got to move more. You got to do more than the other person would, who has a good setup at home.
That's interesting you mentioned a TV tray, because I was reading articles about these little desks that kind of sit on your lap if you're on the couch, and some
Sure.
of them like pivot up. Are there any good options when it comes to that? I kind of was looking, and I was curious about when it was pivoting up. So you kind
Sure.
of it was kind of like on an incline. And I was like, I don't know if your head would be at a neutral position with that.
Right. Again, I mean, there's amazing millions of products out there, and maybe there's one that's amazing I just don't even know about. But then there's also just as many ones that are just a contraption that looks cool. So just utilize the four principles we talked about. Does it allow your neck to be in a neutral posture? Then that's what you're going for. Yeah, if it pivots up, where if I trains even a few degrees, that's a positive. If I'm looking down in my lap, that's 30 to 45 degrees looking down. That's a lot of stress on my neck. But if that contraption on my lap allows me to only look at 15 degrees of flexion of my neck, that's much better for me. So yeah, those things can definitely be utilized, and should be if you can. But I don't have a specific recommendation or product that I would recommend. Just following those steps. It's hard to go wrong when you kind of keep those four things in mind.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the golden rule of
Yeah,
like good workplace ergonomics.
totally. Totally.
I know we talked about this a little bit and we've touched on kind of movement here and there. And with your quote, motion is lotion. I also read a good quote, the best posture is the next posture, about the importance of moving on a regular basis. So again, can you just touch on the importance of taking regular breaks and some ways to incorporate it, whether it's setting a timer or making sure that you're exercising before or after your workday? What advice do you have about regular movement?
Yeah, no, that motion lotion is huge. Just remember that, and it makes total sense. It will guide you. Setting timers is excellent. It's easy to do, right? You click once on your whatever calendar you use, and it will daily reminders. And what I try to recommend is just figuring out times where it doesn't affect or impact your work. Most of the time, people say to me, I run out of time. Life is already so busy. I can't do one more thing. So you try to blend things that you're already doing. So, a second ago, we talked about doing the neck stretches while you're reading an email. Well, on a conference call, there's some super easy low back stretches that can be done while you can remain seated so you continue to contribute to the call. And they're pretty mind numbing. You don't have to use a lot of focus. So let's quickly go over those and then I'll share some other tips. So first of all, okay, do this with me, Cassandra. Cross your right leg over your left knee. So you're sitting like man position. That's what I think of. It's just a memory trick.
Okay, gotcha.
Gotcha, got it. So you already feel a little bit of stretch in your right buttocks and your right thigh, and you can increase that by just leaning forward, keeping your back straight and leaning forward. You feel it really intensify, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is it. You're just sitting here chatting, and this stretches that famous piriformis muscle that gives us the sciatic pain sometimes, or gives us a lot of low back or buttocks pain. Super easy to do. And I just hold this for anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And then you obviously comply by doing it on the left side, followed by doing a little bit of a lumbar twist stretch. And that's easy by crossing your legs like knee to knee, like a woman stretch, knee crossing would be, right?
Right.
Once you have your knees crossed, you're just going to twist opposite to whichever knee is crossed. So if my right knee's crossed, I'm going to twist to the right.
How do you go this way?
Got it?
Got it.
And again, I mean, these are impervious to be done when you're on a call. No one's going to know that you're there stretching.
Right.
Yet you're creating a better work environment for you and potentially reducing an injury or pain that's going to come. And then I love the fact that bathroom breaks, I love our bladder because it reminds us to get up and move. So listen to that and get up and move, and try to really change up your pattern of movement every 45 to 60 minutes. So incorporate one of those things we talked about. Switch from seated to standing. You can't do that. That's okay. Do the neck stretches. The next 45 minutes to an hour, do the low back stretch. The next 45 to an hour, get up and go to the bathroom. The next 45 minutes, and then you're like, you're just repeating them. And I have a lot of patients who will have that super long, they're waiting for their lunch to cook or whatever in the microwave. Boom, you throw out a stretch right there. You change up something like that. There's a million things on YouTube that you can find in office stretches to follow along that sometimes are what someone needs. They need someone to coach them. Just do that. It's free and it guides you along very easily.
Great advice and great tips. So it can be tempting sometimes to work from bed. Is that a big yes or no, or are there any tips to keep in mind for if you are really just want to work in bed that day? Do you have any advice?
So obviously for me, that's a big no, but if you're bound and determined, here's what you need to do. Follow the 4 principles, okay? So get your spine as a neutral position as possible. So I'd be on your back and not sitting up against your headboard. Because if you sit up against your headboard, your legs are extended and you're overly stretching all the back side of your muscles, okay? And then you're flexing your hip flexors, which are already naturally tight because we sit so much as a culture, and they pull directly on your lumbar spine. So lay on your back, use a tablet, avoid your laptop, hold the tablet above your head. You can rest your elbows. Try to use either none or only one small pillow to support your neck, because then that keeps your neck from being too flexed. And then move often, roll to your side and put your tablet on the side of the bed and work from that side. Then switch and rotate to your other side. And then, get up and stretch. But I would avoid it at all costs. But if you're going to do it, be smart about it.
Absolutely. And so I think it bears kind of just talking about quickly. Obviously, stress is a big component of pain, and the more stressed you are, the more I think everyone tenses up and can kind of cause that neck and shoulder and back pain. What's the importance right now, especially right now, of practicing mindfulness and learning to relax and learning to manage your stress?
Um, I'm not a specialist in this, but let me tell you, I've worked with enough people who are and seen enough research about how perceived stress in our body leads to musculoskeletal pain, which is what I do. And again, there's countless numbers of patients who I've tried to treat who get no benefit from what I do. And I realize this is not truly musculoskeletal, even though they feel muscular pain. It's a stress response. You know, back in the day, you got chased by the tiger and then you either made it up a tree or you got eaten and your stress was over, one way or the other. Where here, a looming deadline, it never goes away and it may last for weeks or months. And so managing stress comes by not only through exercise and stretching, it's a huge component of stress relief. I mean, a lot of specialists will talk about that as a way to reduce stress is through exercise. So that's why just doing these simple stretches can be a part of that. But a real exercise routine regimen is necessary to get the max benefit. But let me tell you, there is so many great applications out there on your smart devices to achieve mindfulness meditation, short meditation, taking a few minutes during a break, during a lunch, to do meditation to relax your stressful environment. And at that point, I say get out of your workspace completely, lay on the floor, where you can get your body into a fully relaxed state. That's really easy. There's also some easy things to do with the stretching, but it's not just stretching, it's toning. It helps relieve that muscular stress. So let's talk about some easy toning exercises that you can do. And you can apply this similar principle to any muscle group in your body. Let's just do the neck and shoulders because it's so easy. So let's start with we did the trap stretch earlier. If we do a trap shrug squeeze, that can also be just as effective. So essentially you're bringing your you're bringing your shoulders to your ears. Yes, there we go. And you're just squeezing. It almost feels like those muscles get fatigued, and that's shunting blood back into the muscles where it's been absent because you've been overusing them. Okay. We can also do a shoulder blade squeeze, like we're trying to put a pencil between our shoulder blades and squeezing. Those back muscles get overused when using the mouse, and a lot of people will say they experience burning sensation or like a weird feeling on their shoulder blade on the right side. Have you ever experienced that by chance?
No, thankfully.
Okay, good. Well, a lot of people have when they use the mouse repetitively because that muscle just gets overly used, and contracting it is sometimes better than stretching it. So I'll have them contract and hold until they feel like their muscle's almost about to cramp, and then relax. And they'll do like some cycles of this. And then it's easy to do a similar thing with your neck. You can do isometric holds of your neck. That just means I'm keeping my neck in neutral position and I'm pushing, let's say, to the right, and then I'm going to resist with my right hand, contracting my muscles but not letting my head move because I'm pushing against it with my right hand. And you can go to the left, you can go backwards, forwards, and this really does help when you're in those stressful, tense moments and your body's like seizing up. You use these simple stretching and toning exercises we've been talking about to let them go. Oh, not to mention there's a million deep breathing exercises you could do that are fantastic for stress relief. Motion is lotion. Take breaks, walk around on every conference call and every other break in between.
Yes, absolutely. Words to live by, especially during this work from home kind of era. So the last thing I want to ask you about today is about just seeing a chiropractor to help ease some of our aches and pains from, bad ergonomics, whether we're in the office, we're at home, during the pandemic or afterwards. In general, how can a chiropractor help with pain?
Great, thanks for that question. So a chiropractor uses hands-on therapy that eases the current pain you're experiencing, as well as increasing the range of motion in the stiff joints, stiff muscles that you're experiencing from work and or other life experiences. And they'll guide you to very personalized activities of daily living that keep you feeling great after their appointment. The goal is not to go to a chiropractor the rest of your life every day. You'll go intermittently, just like you'd go to your primary care doctor when you get sick. The idea is you might see your chiropractor when the stretches, the exercises that you've been taught stop working, or you've injured yourself by doing something like a slip fall or heavy lifting. Those are the times you go for a few appointments. They do the therapy and teach you things to do. And sometimes they'll guide you to go to physical therapy or guide you back to your primary care doctor for medication to help in the recovery time. Just like here in the clinic, we're all about integration. Chiropractors are becoming more integrated into healthcare, where they're having a team around them and not just as a solo practitioner. So that's the kind of chiropractor I hope you'll be seeking out, as one who uses all of our awesome providers to help in your care plan, to helping you get better. And that's what we strive for here at the clinic. We use the latest and greatest research and therapies and techniques to help our patients not only get better, but stay better by doing the things at home, like office setup, like we talked about today, to help them feel good and avoid musculoskeletal pain. So, hey, Cassandra, I want to say thanks for having me on. This has been freaking awesome.
This has been fascinating, and so many wonderful things that I know our listeners will be able to incorporate throughout their day, again, whether they're at home or they're back in the office. So thank you, Dr. Bang, for taking the time to share your advice and your wisdom with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Good luck to everybody out there. Hang tight, and we'll be strong together.
To make an appointment with a Cleveland Clinic chiropractor, call 216-448-4325. If you want to listen to more Health Essentials podcasts featuring experts at Cleveland Clinic, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from, or visit clevelandclinic.org/HE podcast. And don't forget, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Cleveland Clinic, all one word, to stay up to date on the latest news and information. Thanks again for listening, and stay safe.